Today's word is stupendous.
You need some encouragement.
We really, really love listening to you guys.
You need some inspiration.
We just found your Stupendous Marriage podcast.
Stupendous Marriage Encouragement.
You're listening to the Stupendous Marriage Show.
Hey there, welcome to the Stupendous Marriage Show. My name is Stu Gray.
Hey, I'm Lisa Gray.
This is a show where we answer marriage questions. You send them to us via email, usually, on air at stupendousmarriage.com. You can also text them 1-615-592-1060. Our question today comes from a husband who wants some help dealing with his wife's sexual abuse in her past.
He also kind of mentions how he doesn't know how to bring it up. And I know we have that a lot in our marriage. I feel like there's been many times that we have an argument, we have a fight, and a lot of times it's not like big stuff. It's not like something that's like going to change our life or anything, right? And then we go to bed, and the next day we wake up and we act like nothing happened. And it's just funny to me.
We're not supposed to do that? You mean that's not supposed to be that way?
We're actually supposed to, like, come to a conclusion, wrap it up.
But see, if we go to bed, then that is a conclusion.
Oh,
and
is
we're
that
done.
what it is?
That's the conclusion of the day, and it's in the past. So let's move forward.
Oh,
see,
my gosh.
You're right. That's not as healthy as it probably could be.
Well, I mean, just yesterday, we were trying to record, and we just couldn't get on the same wavelength, and I ended up leaving. You were kind of, what word would you use for how you were? Because I have my words, but I don't know if yours would be the same.
I was pleasant and wonderful.
Oh,
I was loving and caring.
That was definitely not my words.
I was short with you, and I'm sorry.
Yes. Well, and the thing is I leave, and I'm gone most of the day. I get home, and after I've been here for a little bit, I went up to you, and I was like, hey, is there anything you want to say to me? And, of course, you're like, yeah, what's for dinner? I'm like, okay. Anything else? And after about 3 times, you finally said, sorry. And it was just funny because I'm like, I don't know that you would have brought it up. That's a perfect example. It's kind of gone past. It's no longer tense. And we don't generally do that well, where we actually stop and go, hey, hold on, time out. I messed up here, or I was hurt here, or whatever the case may be. And it is harder than people think to bring up a tender subject.
Well, and it also was a good example of differing expectations.
Right.
Because we were going to try something different with the show, or at least that was my vision of what we were going to do. And you wanted to come in and just answer a question like we normally do. Mm-hmm. And so I was prepared to do one thing. You were prepared to do a different thing. And expectations were different. We couldn't get past them in that moment. And so it took me a while as a male and as a guy who, once the train is moving, it takes it a long time to slow down and stop. Once I don't know if I'd call it anger, but high emotion was really charged from that conversation, I was trying to process through it and trying to let go of expectations and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone back to it, but thank you for getting me back to that place.
It's good for you, honey. So to this listener, we understand, dude. We really understand. It's hard to have difficult conversations when things are not being difficult. So.
And with all of that, we will get to this email next. All right, so let's get to our email for today. I want to thank you guys. You guys don't preach puppies, rainbows, and cotton candy. Also, you don't preach marital fire and brimstone. You're honest about struggles and trials. I've recently started rekindling with my wife, and that's how I found y'all. I searched for Christian marriage, and you piqued my interest with all the sex titles. Yep, typical guy. I also want to thank you for the inspiration. You and another podcast have inspired me to start my own podcast. That's cool. As for marriage questions, I really only have one. How can I help my wife deal with her sexual abuse when she was knee-high to a grasshopper? For the most part, it doesn't pop up much, but when it does, she doesn't talk to me about it. But like I said, I sucked at being a hubby for a season, so she may not have felt safe. I've spoken with her about it, and I told her I worry about it, but I don't want to ask her about it if it's not on her mind and trigger a psychological response. So I need her to initiate the conversation. The example I gave is I ask her how she's doing because she isn't acting right, and she says nothing. If my response is, oh, is it your abuse? Now, if she just had a slight headache and now she's thinking of that and has a slight headache, I do hope to hear back from you.
That's exactly what we were just talking about. It's really hard when you have an elephant in the room, especially in this situation, because it is a big deal, that you don't bring it up at the wrong times where it causes that person. I know for you, like there was a while there that you were dealing with some health stuff, and I almost every day was like, hey, how are you feeling? Hey, how are you feeling? And then I realized one day, I'm making him stop when he's not thinking about his health stuff and think about his health stuff.
Yeah.
So I stopped asking, because I didn't want to bring up the thing that you're trying not to think about it, but then I also wanted to know how you're doing. So it's a really slippery slope of what you do when you have that type of situation in your marriage.
I think your support mindset is a really good place to be. You're wanting to support her, you're wanting to love her well, but you're not wanting to open that can of worms. And it really is in her court. The ball is in her court to talk about this sort of stuff with you. And it may not be to the level that you want it to be. We're wired differently. We process things differently as males and females, as husbands and wives, with differing life stories and experiences that we bring to our marriage. And, she may not be in a place where she can just give you all the information that you want. She may not have processed it well, or she's still going through it, or certain things she doesn't realize trigger certain emotions. And that's work that she has to do. And as she goes through that and processes through that, she can bring you along for the ride. She can tell you, okay, XYZ triggers these emotions and memories in me. And so when you do this, unfortunately, that causes that, and I'm working through that process. But she may not know that even. So that's more her work that she kind of has to do than you trying to drag it out of her. And since you're not a trained counselor, we're not trained counselors. We don't necessarily have the tools to give her to work through all of that. That's stuff she's got to do, be it a small group or a recovery group or group therapy or private counseling, things that she can really unpack. But also moving forward, you don't want to be walking on eggshells all the time. And you do have to be flexible and you do have to be adaptable because she's still learning, she's still growing, and just on a base level for all of us, we're different day to day. We deal with things emotionally different than we did yesterday. We're not the same people.
Thank goodness for us.
Right? Yeah, right? We're not the same people that we were yesterday. We're not the same people we were when we got married. And forgetting that, you tend to stumble a little bit more. Oh, she's going to respond this way when I do X, Y, Z. Well, maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing is, you do have to talk about it. I do think it's important for you guys together to have some type of conversation. I know for us and our journey with the addiction to pornography, I feel like one of the turning points is when we finally got to the place that we could have a conversation about it, a non-emotional, just like you could go, this is how I feel, this is how my emotions are about this. I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was a time in a season that we were at a water park and I could sense something was wrong. I could sense a shift in the atmosphere for you. And instead of poking you and like, hey, what's wrong? I just kind of in a code way said, hey, are you okay? Are you struggling? And I think the way I phrased it, I don't even remember exactly what I said, was really helpful for you because you were able to go, I'm struggling. And I was able to be like, hey, how can I help? And so we literally changed the area of water park we were in, went to an area where there are less half-naked women, and just took a break. And you just talking to me about it for a couple minutes while our son was playing, really, like, it completely deflated and went away. I think at some point in time, if you can have a productive conversation, something like, I know that this is not something you want to talk to me about. I know it's something you're still processing, but how can you and I come together and work at this as a team so that I can support you better? Is there a trigger word you can say to me? So when you are thinking about that, you can say, yeah, I'm thinking about that situation, to where then I know just to back off, to give you a hug, not to try to dig in. Is there a way that you guys can learn to communicate about it without communicating about it? Does that make sense? To where you can support her when she's in that mindset, and she can tell you she's in that mindset without having to bring it all back up.
I've learned through recovery that just being able to talk about stuff brings healing and lifting of that spirit. You were talking about being at the water park and being in a different place at the water park where, 90% of women aren't clothed, because that doesn't happen at a water park.
We were in the kids area, so it was a lot better.
I'm just joking. But what happens is, in that moment, I can feel it heavily on me. But just the release of going, hey, I'm having this issue right now, and I really just needed to, it's like when you're making tea and the tea kettle goes, and it whistles, you take the pressure off by talking about it. And you did it well in that situation, because I didn't feel attacked. I didn't feel controlled. I didn't feel like you were pressuring me. I just felt like you were standing there supporting me, and I was able to go, man, I just feel like all this body part stuff and all this flesh, and oh my gosh, and I do feel overwhelmed right now, and it's fine. I'm not attracted to anything. It's just on me. And all of a sudden it was like, whoom, and it lifts. That's been the beauty of recovery and just the work that I've done, and that really does help. So if you can support your wife in her thing, you realize a tension or something going on. Hey, I'm here to listen. I don't want to poke at you or prod you. Do you want to talk about it? Might be helpful and supportive to her.
And honestly, I had not handled it well many other times where I had, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Talk to me. Why won't you talk to me? And thankfully we had a good conversation about how we could stand together in that. And when it happened, and I felt it, I instantly felt it. Like exactly what this husband said. He felt like there was something wrong, and I could feel it. But instead of making a big production out of it or picking on you about it, I just opened the door, gave you the opportunity to be able to vent a little bit. You were in the position to do that, and it completely deflated. And I do think in order to get to that place, though, you have to have a big conversation. There has to be one big, good timing, non-emotional, let's sit down next Saturday at 3:00 and have a conversation about how to do this better, because I feel like this is the elephant in the room, and I don't know how to support you in this.
That's an updating of your relationship. That is a coming together and going, hey, I'm checking in. This is the big check-in. Where are you emotionally with this, and how can I help you, and how can I communicate well with you, and how can you communicate well with me? That is updating your relationship, updating your marriage, getting up to date with where you are, where we are, how we want to handle this going forward, and then you go forward and try to do those things together and love one another well in that.
You have to be intentional. When you're the spouse that's trying to be the supportive one, you have to change your dialogue, because my natural inclination would be like, hey, what's wrong? What's wrong? And so I had to step back and go, that's not what he needs. He needs me just to be like, hey, something going on? Are you struggling? And that's all I needed to say. And learning what your spouse needs and how to communicate well with them will really help in this situation.
We appreciate your email. You can send us yours on air at stupendousmarriage.com. Here's some housekeeping and some cool updates. We're now on Spotify, so if you have the Spotify app, you can find the Stupendous Marriage show there, and we'd love for you to listen there if you do listen on Spotify. But you can always find the show on any of your favorite podcast players. That's just fun to say. You can also send us your text if you've got a marriage question, 1-615-592-1060.
Talk to you next time.
See ya.
Yeah.
Like the show? Like the show.
Yeehaw.
Share the podcast. Tell another couple.
Hold on. Hold up. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Cha-cha-cha.
All righty.
What's it? What's happening?
I also wanted to thank you for the inspiration you and another podcast. How can I help my wife deal with... As for marriage questions, I really only... What?
You're very nasally.
I
too,
know
so,
I am.
yeah.
Ugh.
Bye.
Hasta luego.
Adios.
Sayonara.
Arrivederci. Is that
Happy
the right word?
trails to you until we meet again.
That's just too far.
Okay, goodbye.
Elvis has left the building. Okay, let's start over. Yeah.
Like the show? Like the show. Share the podcast. Tell your married friends.
Yeah.